Amazing. Can everyone see me? Can you see the screen? Business and economic concepts, full screen. Amazing. All right, let's get started. So, this is a crash course in business, finance, and economics. I claim that I'll teach you everything you need to know about business, finance, and economics for consulting interviews. Um, depending, I'm pretty confident I have everything in the presentation, but it's just a matter of time and whether we can go through everything in the hour. Just a little bit about background about me. My name is Mo Shafi. I was a former engagement manager at McKinsey and Company. I was there for 5 years. If you include grad school, I was there for 8 years. I was there from business analyst out of undergrad to an engagement manager, and I come from a non-traditional background. I was an engineer, didn't do an internship, and I was an international student. So I feel all of you there who who are going through this, cool process to frame it positively. And going through the process myself, I really enjoy passing the favor to other people, and I coached hundreds. I would say like maybe close to 800 or so students out of college and MBA. When I was at McKinsey, I was pretty active in recruiting, and I led campus recruiting for our office. So I did interviews, and I coached a lot of candidates over the 8 years I was with McKinsey. So I've seen all the mistakes, all the cases, all the issues that you can go through. I have an MBA from Stanford, and I got a degree in public policy and economic development from the Harvard Kennedy School, and I'm passionate about coaching, enhancing diversity in consulting firms, and the office. And you'll see a little bit of that in the presentation. Just a sales pitch now. I have offerings on Leland. I do this kind of when my wife is a doctor, so she sometimes works at night. So I try to keep my clients to like 2 or 3 people at a time, and spend quality time with each one, preparing them. You can do hourly. You can do a package at a reduced price where we cover a lot of what you need for consulting interviews. We go through cases, critiques. I perform a case in front of you, and go through any other areas that you need to go through. We can cram finance and economics more, give you math review of all the math that you need for consulting firms. I can go through your resume. In my MBB resume review, I've reviewed easily thousands of resumes over the years. That I can say thousands for sure. But happy to help in any way. Feel free to take a screenshot, and I'll put my link, my link in the chat if you want to chat. I've helped hundreds of people end up in MBB firms. My claim to fame is one of the candidates I helped almost now 7 years ago is a McKinsey partner. So I always tell them that I'm the one who got them into consulting in the first place, and demand a cut of the firm's profit. Why this course? All right, so consulting interviews or casing is not testing your business and economic knowledge. You don't need to be a master in finance and economics, but you need to know the basics that helps you navigate the cases. So the goal of this course is to move. So this is like a knowledge curve where, this is the bottom percentile, and then the top percentile at the right. The goal is to move you from toddler knowledge in business and economics. I hope I'm not offending anyone. The goal is not to make you Warren Buffett, but like to put you in this sweet spot where you're like at average, above average. So that's what the consulting case interviews require to excel. So you don't want to you don't want to go the extra mile and be like a finance and economics guru. I've seen that kind of backfires because you're thinking about too many complicated things and fancy formulas and missing kind of the basic problem at hand. So the goal of this course is to move you to this sweet spot. And this is a mind map of the course that I'm very proud of. It took a long time to build. If you want to take a screenshot of this, feel free to do so. I claim that this mind map is everything you need for finance and business concepts for consulting interviews. And it will be kind of the guiding agenda, if you wish, for our presentation today. So we'll start from here and then we move down the tree on all the concepts that we will need to cover. And I like the analogy of this mind map or the tree map because I like my students to have all their concepts connected and then they know where we are. So like if we're talking about price, they immediately know where they are in this mind map. What are the concepts that are adjacent to that? What are the concepts that are kind of vertically behind it, so that they can navigate the case easily. If you have like you can think of it as a treasure hunt and like they throw you in the middle of the island, you know exactly where you are, what are kind of the concepts that you should play with, what are the concepts that are related to this at a higher level in case you need to jump into these. All right, let's start with the very basic thing. I promise this presentation will start from the very, very bottom up. And this is an office reference. What is a business? There are 4 kinds of business: tourism, food service, railroads, and sales, and hospitals/manufacturing, and air travel. If you haven't seen The Office, highly recommend that you watch it. But leaving my dad jokes aside, a business is, and I think this is the most helpful way to think about it, is a bunch of contracts between a central entity and a bunch of stakeholders. I know some people tend to think of business as kind of input and output. I've seen people struggle because of that when they're in case interviews, because they only think about the physical inputs to a business and the physical output for a business, and then they forget, for example, legal fees, marketing, things of that sort that are important cost to revenue drivers. So a very helpful way is, hey, it is just an entity that has a bunch of contracts with other entities. They have contracts with investors, with banks, with their employees, with their customers, with the insurance company, with suppliers, distributors, the landlord, and so on and so forth. What is the goal of a business? and I know this sounds like very simple and stupid, but like you'd be surprised how many cases I've done over the years where people say to maximize revenue or to increase whatever it is, to minimize cost. No, 99% of the times the goal of the business is to maximize profit. And usually that's the first part in a consulting interview. They give you the case and then you recite the case back to them and say, I'm assuming that their goal is to maximize profit. Are there any other objectives that I should be aware of? Other objectives could be social and environmental impact if they care about the triple bottom line, what they call triple bottom line, which is profit plus people plus the planet, so the environment and the employees and the community in which they operate. Growth, so new businesses typically don't care about profitability. They usually have a source of funding and they're focused on growth at the beginning until a later stage. Or legacy, for boomers about to retire, maybe they don't care about the last 2% of profit maximization, and they care about the legacy of the business that they've built. So this comes up a lot at the very beginning of a case when you kind of declare that or ask about the goal of the customer or client that you're serving. All right, and then again with the basics, I just want to cover this very quickly. So there are 3 financial statements. There's something called the income statement, there's something called the balance sheet, and there's something called the cash flow statement. In consulting interviews, in 99.9% of the case interviews I've seen, you never need to know the detailed kind of analysis of income statements or balance sheets or cash flow statements. It requires some accounting knowledge, and that's not a prerequisite. per se for consulting interview. You just need to know at a high level what each one of these statements kind of communicate, and you'll be able to read it easily. So income statement is like basically your monthly budget, maybe in a way. So it starts with the revenue, how much money you're getting from your customers, and then you deduct all the expenses, and then it ends with the profit at the end. And usually it covers like a period, so either a quarter or a year or whatever it is. So like over this year, you've made $2 million in revenue, $1 million went to expenses, you're left with $1 million in net profit. So that's what an income statement is. 99.9% of the cases you don't need anything more than that, except maybe sometimes in Bain they have these convoluted weird cases, but that's extremely rare to see. The second area is the balance sheet. The balance sheet is basically telling you it's your bank account. You can think of it as your bank statement. So at a given moment, on this specific day, how much money did you have and how many liabilities did you have? So how much cash do you have? You have your car, you have your house, you have other assets, and also you have debt. So you have a mortgage on your house, you have HELOC, you have a personal loan, whatever it is. So it's kind of the net worth of the company in a way. How much do they have in asset and how much do they have in liability? And again, it's a snapshot on a single day. It's not over a period. Income statement tells you like over the last quarter or a year, here is what happened. Balance sheet is like a photo taken on a single day. It's like, check, here is how your company looked on this specific day. Finally, cash flow statement. It tells you where your cash went. So how much cash did you make from your operating activities, from your financing activities, and from your investing activities? Basically, it's kind of similar to the income statement, but it's really focused on the cash. So the income statement includes everything, like the money that you actually got and the money that you were promised. So if there is a customer that didn't pay you but said they will pay you in 6 months, that revenue is recognized in the income statement, but cash flow only shows you the cash, the dollars that came into your company, and how much of that cash went outside of your company. All right, so let me take a look. Any questions? I don't see any questions. Wonderful. So it seems that my explanation so far is clear. All right, this is the most important slide, guys. And girls, I guess, to be gender specific. I want you to memorize this. This is the most important framework in consulting interviews. It seems very simple, but it covers 90% of cases, and I've seen 90% of people get it wrong. So I would say 70-80% of consulting interviews, this is the framework that you need to use. Profit is nothing but how much revenue you made minus how much cost you incurred in a given period. Revenue is nothing but the average selling price, how much you're selling the product for, times how much you sold of that product. You sell iPhones, what's the price of the iPhone, times how many iPhones did you sell in a given year. Minus cost. Cost is nothing but fixed cost and variable cost. AJ, if you can mute yourself, I would really appreciate it. I'll actually mute you. Here you go. So fixed cost plus variable cost. We'll talk a little bit about what fixed cost is and what variable cost is. Variable cost is the cost that changes with your production. So let's say you're producing iPhones. Every iPhone you produce, you need a certain amount of plastic and metal and a processor and a screen and whatever. So if you produce 1,000 iPhones, your variable cost is going to increase. Fixed cost does not change with how much you're producing. So let's say you have a factory. That factory is fixed in size. or say insurance on your company that does not change with how much you're producing. It's a fixed fee, whether you're producing one iPhone or you're producing a billion iPhones. It's exactly the same cost. So that's the key difference between fixed cost and variable cost. And as you can see, variable cost is the cost of one item times the sales volume. So, very, very important distinction that like almost everyone gets it wrong from the beginning, even though it sounds like very simple now. Cost of one item is not equal to the average selling price. I see people all the time kind of confuse those two in the middle of the interview, and that's a huge no-no, right? Because if the cost of producing one item, the variable cost of producing an iPhone equals its selling price, that means you don't make any profit, right? So like it cost me $100 to make the iPhone. I sold it for $100. I'm losing money because I have to pay for the factory, I have to pay for insurance, and so on and so forth. So it's very important to remember there is the price and then there is the cost of producing one item. Those two are not equal. Don't use them interchangeably. It sounds simple, but most people get it wrong. Awesome. Example of fixed cost: rent, real estate, salaries, less commission days, depreciation of assets. So you have a machine that can work, say, for like 3 or 4 years, and then like it collapses. So every year you depreciate it. You don't need to know what depreciation is in detail, just like at a high level. Equipment maintenance is also considered a fixed cost. Just think of it as, does it change with how much I'm producing? Yes, then it's a variable cost. No, then it's a fixed cost. Examples of variable cost: raw material, production supplies, direct labor, and so on. Any questions so far, team? Are we following? Speed is good. Concepts are clear. Just give me thumbs up if everything is great. Amazing. I love it. Cool. All right. So how do we measure and compare profitability, right? So like there are cases that will come and says like, oh, they have, this company has like $1 million. They can invest it in option A or they can invest it in project B. Which one should they use? There are, what you're doing in these cases is that you compare how much profit you make in the first scenario, you compare it to the second scenario and see which one produces more profit, right? Again, everything seems so simple until you're in an actual case, and then like not having a mind map or a structure that helps you kind of go through the concepts, you might get lost. Cool. All right. So there are different measures of profitability, how profitable a product is or a project is or whatever it is. The first one is called accounting profit. This is like basically what we call normal profit. Like if we just say profit, then we probably mean accounting profit. Accounting profit is nothing but revenue minus cost. Very simple, very easy. That's 80% of the cases. You don't need to know anything else for those cases. Another measure is break-even period. So you invest in a machine, and then this machine saves you money. So every year you save a little bit of money until you break even. Say like you bought the machine for $10 million, and every year you're saving $1 million because you're using this machine. So it will take you 10 years until you recover the cost of the new machine. That's called the break-even period. It's the cost of the investment divided by the annual increase in profit. Remember, profit is either revenue minus cost. So either cost is reduced or revenue is increased. Awesome. Next one is return on investment, ROI. It's basically net profit divided by the cost of investment. This is helpful when you're trying to compare two investments. So one investment needs you to invest $10 million and you will make $50 million. The other investment will cost you $1 million, but it will give you $2 million in profit. So which one is better? it's hard to compare, the accounting profit, because like they require different kinds of investment, right? Like one requires only 1 million, the other one requires 10 million. So what do you do in that case? You use return on investment. So the first one is going to give me 50 million divided by 10 million, and then the second one is going to give me 2 million divided by 1 million, and that's how you calculate return on investment. The final one, oh, actually not the final one, there are two more. Internal rate of return, super fancy. But basically, it is very similar to accounting profit, but it takes into consideration the time. So basically, it tells you the sooner you get the returns, the better. So in one case, you invest $1 million, and then in 10 years, you get $2 million, versus another option, you invest now $1 million, and every year you'll get, say, $200,000. Internal rate of return, you'll never have to calculate it. I've never seen a case in my life that requires you to calculate it, so you don't have to worry about calculating it or the formula, but you just need to understand it, that it takes into consideration when the return comes. If the returns come sooner, the better, because it takes time into consideration. What's the time horizon of the investment? The last measure is net present value, similar to accounting profit, but again, takes into consideration when the return of investment comes. So the sooner the better. So those two at the bottom takes time into consideration. The top three are kind of time agnostic. Again, all you need to know is probably accounting profit and how to calculate it, break even, and how to calculate it, and return on investment and how to calculate it. The two at the bottom, you just need to know what they are so that you sound sophisticated in case they show up in a case or they ask you about them. But you will never need to calculate them. You just need to know that they take time into consideration. So we said the sooner the returns, the better, right? So for when we talked about timing, the sooner the returns, the better. Why? A question: would you have a $10 today, or would you rather have $10 in 1 year? Can you guys answer in the chat? $10 today or $10 in 1 year? Amazing. Thank you, Maggie. Why today? Exactly. Usually there is inflation. Usually it's positive. So you would rather have an investment today, like a $10 today, so that you can invest it. You can do whatever you want with it, versus in 1 year where it's probably worth less. So you can put it in the bank, you can invest it, you can buy stocks, you can do whatever, give it away, versus in 1 year, the $10 is going to cost less, or it's going to be worth less. So this is called the time value of money. Money now is better than money in the future. Why? Because there's always inflation. There's usually positive. There's always interest rate. There's usually positive. In rare cases, it's zero. So if I give you $10 now, you can put it in the bank and earn interest on it. Versus if I give it to you, a year later, it's worth less. All right. So that's the time value of money. You just need to know it. Future money is less valuable. If I promise you $1 billion in 1 billion years, it's kind of worthless, right? Versus if I promise you $200 tomorrow, you might take that deal. All right, so I have some fancy visualization here. So future money is less valuable. Future money is discounted, and that's where discounting comes from. So to accurately compare two investment opportunities, you need some standardization to ensure that you're comparing apples to apples. The two, and my wife is annoyed. You can stop by and say hi.
Not annoyed.
Okay, she's closing the door.
I'm asleep.
All right.
Hi. Listen to him. He's great.
Thank you. All right. Very important note on comparing profitability. To accurately compare two investment opportunities, you need some standardization to ensure you're comparing apples to apples. The most two common factors are Number one, capital, and number two, time. What does that mean? A lot of like gibberish, right? So you have two investment opportunities. Investment A says, give me $1, I'll pay you $2 in 1 year. Investment B says, give me $2, I'll give you $3 in 1 year. Which investment is better? Team, let's put that in the chat. Which investment would you take? Investment A or investment B? Cool. A lot of A's. All right. So why do we say A? Because we need to like why this is a problem, why this is a tricky question, right? Because they require you to pay different amounts. So the capital is different. The capital that you need to invest upfront is different. So it makes it a little tricky. So what do? You standardize the capital. What does that mean? You divide. So you take the $2. So you say, I'm going to get $2 if I pay $1. So 2 divided by 1 equals 2, or $2 per 1 hour per $1 invested. The second one is going to give you $3 per $2 invested. So if you divide 3 by 2, you'll get 1.5. So for every dollar I invest, I get $1.50. In investment A, I get $2. So investment A is better. That's the ROI concept. The second thing you need to standardize is the time horizon. So again, investment A requires $1 and pays you $2 in 1 year. Investment B requires $1 and pays $3 in 2 years. It's tricky. How do we determine which one is better? Well, the way you think about it is like how much money I'm making per year of waiting, right? So in investment A, I pay $1 and then I come back a year later and I find $2. So every year I'm making $2 basically. The second one, I'm investing $1. I wait 2 years and I find $3. So I'm making $1.5 per year of investment. So again, the same concept of standardizing capital and standardizing time horizons. It's just that what they will give you in the case. They'll give you two investments, and then it's more complicated. Not $1 and $2. They will tell you like, oh, you can buy a farm in Jamaica or invest in a factory in Japan, whatever it is, and you make some assumptions and you do some math, but eventually it comes to this. So either you standardize the capital, you have two different amounts of capital you need to invest up front, so you standardize them, or there's different time horizons and you need to standardize that. So you divide by the number of years to make them apples to apples comparison. Is that clear, team? Should we go over it again? Give me thumbs up if everything is amazing. Love it. Sorry, guys, I'm asking you a lot to put thumbs up. It's just a lonely place here looking at the slides. It would be awesome to feel presence of other people in the room. So that's why I ask you to give thumbs up. All right, how can we increase profit? Again, all of this sounds like very simple, but you'd be surprised. Like once you're in a case and there's someone in front of you and they're saying fancy stuff, you forget the basics. That's why I always focus on the basics. It's the most important thing. You can increase profit in two ways. One, you increase revenue, or you decrease cost. You operate, a car shop. You can either serve more cars, or you can have fewer people who do a better job. And basically, those are the only two ways in increasing profit. And this is the most common kind of case type in interviews, where they ask you like, oh, company X is struggling with its profitability, it declined, what do you think is happening? And then you say like, oh, profitability declined. There are only two reasons: either revenue decreased or the cost increased. Can we look at the revenue? And then you dig deeper into that. Can we look at the cost and dig deeper into that? Again, there's no magic, very simple concepts, but people, forget them. They unfortunately read all these books that are full of useless frameworks, and then they come to the interview saying some random gibberish that they don't understand. And that's how people don't do super well in these interviews, from what I've seen. All right, so revenue. So, we said increase profit, either increase revenue or decrease cost. Let's dig deeper into increase revenue. How can you increase revenue? Oh my God, we remember sales volume times the average selling price. We just covered that, right? So you either sell more, so you sell more iPhones, or you improve your selling price. So you charge more for your iPhones, and that's basically it. That's how you increase the revenue. It's super simple. That's the most common question maybe in cases at the beginning. All right, how can you increase the sales volume? You increase the sales volume in one of two ways, either organic growth or inorganic growth. Fancy words, what does it mean? Organic growth means that you naturally grow your business without any additives, without steroids, without whatever it is, right? So you just continue to invest in marketing, you expand, you get a new office, you hire more salespeople, and so on and so forth. Inorganic marketing is that you turbocharge your growth through external means. So you acquire another business. So, I have like a grocery shop in the neighborhood and I want to grow. There is another grocery shop across the street. I'll buy that grocery shop and I'll merge them. So that's inorganic growth. How do these things come up in interviews? Again, like they come up basically the same way I explain it. They say like company X is like struggling with profitability. What do you think we can do? So it's like, profitability is nothing but revenue minus cost. We can either increase the revenue or decrease the cost. How can we increase the revenue? We can either sell more or we increase our price. How can we sell more? We either grow organically, we invest in marketing, we hire more salespeople, we pay for ads, and so on. Or in organic growth, we find another company that does the same thing, and then we acquire them so that we get their customers. That's how it shows up in interviews. All right, so now let's dig deeper into organic growth. And you see what's happening here? Like we start from profit to revenue, right? Increasing revenue. Then we said, how can we increase the volume? Through organic or inorganic growth. And now we're digging deeper into organic growth. So think of the map again. That's the most helpful analogy. Now we are at the organic growth tree. So that how can we grow organically? Product development, market expansion, marketing innovation, customer retention. These are just some ideas for you in interviews when they ask you like, we can grow organically or inorganically. What ideas do you have to grow organically? We can develop a new product. Instead of selling iPhones, we also sell iPads. Or we can expand our market. So we're selling in the US, we can sell in China. Marketing innovation. So, we can start marketing iPhones to toddlers and start selling them iPhones. Or customer retention. We have, 100,000 people every year who stop using their iPhones and get a Samsung device. So we just need to give them offers so that we make them our customers. So these are some of the ways to grow your company organically. We talked about marketing innovation. There's some marketing cases where they tell you like, the company is not growing. They realize that the issue is with marketing. What do you think we should do? There are 4 levers that you should consider when it comes to marketing. They call them the 4 Ps. I hate these like cringy frameworks, but this one is useful. The 4 Ps are product, placement, price, and promotion. So you either think about your product, how can you make it more innovative? How can you think of different use cases for it? So say if you have an iPhone, you sell it to toddlers so that they can watch, Cocomelon or whatever it is on their iPhones. Placement is thinking about where you sell your product. So, hey, we sell it at Best Buy, we sell it on Amazon. What if we open our own retail stores? What if we have a website? What if we go to eBay and sell there? What if we have a used market, used devices market? and so on. Next is pricing. So you think about pricing. Is the product too expensive? Is the product too inexpensive? Can we, do something innovative about our pricing? And finally, promotion. Can we give discounts? Can we do more ads, and so on and so forth? So whenever you hear marketing, and they tell you like, oh, what should we think about when it comes to, like, we realize that the product is not well marketed. What can we do? You think about these 4 factors and you list some items under each. All right, we need to move faster. All right, marketing efforts. How do you evaluate marketing efforts? Basically, there's something called customer lifetime value. Again, business people like to use these fancy terms that are basically simple, but they try to make them complicated. Customer lifetime value is basically how much value you're getting from your customer over their entire lifetime, right? So, and then customer acquisition cost is how much it costs you to acquire that customer. Say, I sell a customer an iPhone for $1,000 and I make $100 in profit. And if I gain them as a customer, they will buy 10 iPhones over their lifetime. Great. So I will make I'll make $100 per iPhone they purchase times $10. That's $1,000. That's the customer lifetime value. How much value I'm getting from this customer over their entire lifetime. Customer acquisition cost is how much am I spending to get that customer. So to get that customer, I had to invest in Instagram ads, and I had to buy billboards, and I had to put random ads in the street. It comes out to be 4 million. We have 3 million customers. 4 divided by 3, that's how much it costs you to acquire a single customer. If you're a profitable business, your lifetime value is greater than your customer acquisition, right? It doesn't make sense to spend $100 to acquire a customer if you're making only $90 from them. All right, now let's move to organic growth. Organic growth can happen through mergers and acquisitions. Basically, going to another business, buying it. Boom, boom, simple. Strategic alliances. So you're a car manufacturer, you work with a developer of autonomous systems so that they can help you have autonomous vehicles. So you create a strategic alliance with them. Or through franchising and licensing. So, you're a fast food chain, your restaurant is very successful. You say, like, you know what? I'll give you the golden arches. You can use that logo, but you have to pay me $100,000 per year. All right, market entry problems. When they tell you, like, oh, there is a company that is trying to expand into China, what do you think? Should they invest in that market or not? There are 2 key things that you need to look at when evaluating a market. A, how big is the market? And 2, how attractive is the market? Very simple. Again, simple stuff, but case interviews are simple concepts. How big is the market is how much money is being spent. Let's say that the car market in China is how many cars are sold per year in China. And then how attractive the market is. Okay, let's start with how big the market is. How can you estimate the size of the market? You basically can do a top-down approach or a bottom-up approach. Top-down approach is basically you start from a very big number and then you make it smaller and smaller, right? So if they tell you what is the size of the paper market in Scranton, Pennsylvania, you say, like, okay, there are, say, 1 billion papers sold in the US per year, or like there is $100 billion worth of paper sold per year. Then in the US, then you narrow it down to Pennsylvania, and then you narrow it down to Scranton. So you say, like, okay, so 100 billion is the size of the paper market in the US. Pennsylvania is probably like 5% of the US economy. So I'm going to narrow it down to 5 billion. And then within Pennsylvania, there are a lot of big cities. So I would assume that Scranton is like 1%, whatever it is, and then you bring it down. So you see how you size it. You start from the big pie, and then you start removing parts until you reach the final number. There's a bottom-up approach, which is you start from the lowest level. So you say like, okay, how many employees are there in Dunder Mifflin in Scranton? There are 5 salespeople. How much do they sell per year? I'll assume they sell $500,000 in sales per employee. All right, so Dunder Mifflin produces or sells $2.5 million in Scranton. How many competitors do they have? Let's assume they have a 10% market share. So I'll multiply that by 10 to get 25 million. Again, the goal of this presentation is not to teach you everything on market sizing, but to teach you the business and economics concept of that. And what you need to know is that there are 2 approaches, the bottom-up approach and the top-down approach. All right, how are we doing, team? All clear? All good? All right. The second thing, so how big the market is, how attractive the market is. How can we determine if the market is attractive or not? There is this framework that you probably should memorize. I forgot what it's called, but if anyone remembers what it's called, like please put it in the chat. But there are 5 elements that you look at to determine if a market is attractive or not. Is there a threat of new entrants? So are there people? Is it like a food truck that anyone can just like buy and you rent a food truck and come compete with you? Or is it like NVIDIA or Intel where it's super hard for new entrants to enter? Second item is bargaining power of the supplier. Is there a supplier that is controlling the market that is impacting you? The bargaining power of buyers. Do you have 1 or 2 customers only, and as a result, they have all the leverage in the world, say Foxconn and Apple. So Apple is probably the only or the biggest customer of Foxconn when it comes to assembling phones. So they have a lot of leverage. They can say, we're not going to pay you 50 billion this year. We're going to reduce it to 45 billion. And you have no choice but to say, okay. Threat of substitutes. So is your product easy to substitute? The less it is easy to substitute, the better the market is, meaning that your customers really, really need you or need your product. And finally, competition. Is there like tough competition between you and your competitors? Are there price wars and so on? So these are the 5 factors to evaluate whether a market is attractive or not. All right, back to the mind map. So we talked about profitability. We dig deeper into revenue. Remember, revenue is nothing but sales volume times the average selling price. Now we covered everything under sales volume. Organic, inorganic growth, marketing, all of that, right? Now let's dig deeper into the second part, which is the average selling price. How can you increase your average selling price? First, there are 3 ways to price a product. So if they tell you, oh, we have a case of a customer who produced a new product and they don't know how to price it. What do you think? How do you price this product? There are 3 ways of doing that. There's one cost plus, a value based, and competitive pricing. Cost plus is that you look at how much it costs you to produce the item. So hey, it cost me like $100 to produce this iPhone, and then I'm gonna add, a target profit margin on top of that. So 20%. So I'm gonna sell it for 120%. Great. That's the first way to price a product. The second way to price a product is value based. What does that mean? I go to customers and I say, how much would you pay to, get this iPhone? And then they say, well, an iPhone would enable me to call my wife. It would enable me to call my parents. These are very valuable things for me. I'm willing to pay $500. So even if it costs you like $20, that's irrelevant. Here we're focusing on how much the customer is valuing your product, and then you price it based on that. The last way to price a product is through competitive pricing. You look at your competitors. You say, listen, the Google Pixel sells for $300. Samsung sells for 350. So we probably need to be in that range. So you look at your competitors, you see how they're pricing, and you price based on that. All right. How do you optimize your pricing? Here are some ideas to optimize your pricing. If they say like, oh, you're in a case and you realize that the issue is with the pricing, here are some ideas. Number one, bundling. What does that mean? You sell multiple products together in one bundle. Instead of selling an iPhone, you sell an iPhone and an iPad and AirPods, and you give them a bundled price that makes them attractive. Number two, price discrimination. What does that mean? You give different discounts to different groups of people. So you say like, hey, if you're a student, we're gonna give you $100 discount. Penetration pricing. What does that mean? That means you lower your prices so that you get a lot of customers initially, and then you increase the price. Unethical, but happens. Freemium pricing. So you tell customers, listen, you can use the product for free, and then you give them like awesome features, and you say, oops, you cannot access that unless you pay me. So that's freemium. I'll skip elasticity for time. It rarely comes in interviews. All right, so now we talked everything about revenue, right? We talked about how to increase your sales volume. We talked about how to optimize your price. Great. Now let's move to cost. How can you reduce cost? There are a billion ways to reduce cost. Here are the most common ones that come up in interviews. Number one, automation. Instead of having a human, you have a machine. Amazing. Number two, process improvements. Instead of, baking in a certain way that results in a lot of waste, you bake in a different way that results in limited waste. Next one, supply chain optimization. You go back to your suppliers and you say like, you're charging me a lot of money. I need to negotiate. And then you negotiate and you improve your supply chain operations. Next one, outsourcing. You have a lot of employees in New York, you're paying New York salaries, you can outsource it to Florida, so that you pay lower prices. Energy efficiency, you reduce your energy consumption. Vertical integration, basically you become a vertically integrated entity, so you produce everything from end to end. What does that mean? You basically, any business has a value chain, right? So like if you think about me, there is the farmer that grows the cows, and then there's the meat processor, and then there's the restaurant, and then there's the end customer. Vertical integration is owning this whole chain together. So like you own your own farm, you have the meat processing facility, and then you have a restaurant. So you're vertically integrated. What does that help with? That helps you reduce the cost, control the supply, do a lot of really cool stuff. And that's called vertical integration, which is owning the entire value chain. So every product has a value chain, which is the steps needed to produce the final product, and you want to own of that value chain as much as possible. You want to have control over these steps so that you can reduce the cost and be more profitable. All right, concepts and economics. Less important, GDP is how much the economy is producing. I'll pick the important ones very quickly. Supply and demand, you probably know. Inflation, seems that everyone knows, unfortunately. Thanks, Biden. Sorry, I don't mean to be political. Unemployment rate is very straightforward. Um, Economics of scale basically means as you scale up, you produce more and your cost decreases. Monopoly is when you have one company that controls the market, and that's it. I see, like I put a lot of names here. Feel free to take a screenshot and read it on your own. But I don't think a lot of them show up in interviews. I was just trying to be comprehensive. All right. consulting jargon. Here are some words that you might hear in consulting interviews that doesn't make sense, but consultants know what they are. Bandwidth is how much capacity you have. Do you have time or not? Benchmarking, you compare business to their peers. So you say like your peers make 11% profit margin. You make 9%. So you're underperforming your benchmark. Great. Best practice is like the best way of doing something. So like it's the industry standard of doing something. So like, oh, best practice when it comes to outsourcing is doing it through a partner, for example. Bleeding edge is, I think, very self-explanatory. Boil the ocean is doing a lot of time wasting stuff. So for example, instead of like sampling your customers, like if you have a million customers, instead of sampling 100 and talking to them to get feedback, you try to talk to every single one of them. That's called boiling the ocean. Circle back is straightforward. Deep dive, I think, is straightforward. Deliverable, drill down, elevator pitch, granularity. I think all of these are straightforward. I'll stop here. Also, let you take a screenshot if you want, and you can read those in your free time. I think they're all self-explanatory. Oops. All right, and we are at the end. So look at this beautiful map that we showed at the beginning. Remember, we started at the profit. We said profit is nothing but revenue minus cost. We talked about revenue. We said revenue is average selling price times sales volume. Average selling price is, you can price the product through cost plus, competitive pricing, value based, pricing optimization is through price discrimination, bundling, freemiums, penetration, pricing. And then we talked about sales volume. We said you can increase sales volume through organic growth or inorganic growth. Organic growth is about improving the product, expanding to new markets, innovating with marketing, and improving customer retention. Or inorganic growth, which is more, mergers and acquisitions, partnerships, joint ventures. Talked about cost, said there's variable cost, fixed cost. There are ways to reduce the cost, like automation, streamlining, outsourcing, vertical integration. We talked a little bit about marketing. We said customer lifetime value is more important, has to be higher than the cost of acquisition. And we talked about the 4 P's of marketing. Amazing. We are at the end. I'll stop here and see if there are any questions. Again, let me put, and this is everything that you need, hopefully, for consulting interviews. I just gave you a mini MBA in 50 minutes or so. And here is my coaching profile. Would love to work with as many of you as possible, and happy to answer any questions. Matthew.
Hey, Mo, when we're talking about new customer acquisition, is that strictly speaking about our marketing, or does any other cost sort of creep into that the cost of new customer acquisition?
Usually it's usually the marketing costs. So like your salespeople, your marketing cost, and so on. So all of your kind of overhead and spending on marketing needed to acquire a customer. Um, the other costs would go into the lifetime value of the customer. So let me open that again. Bum 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 bum. Where is it? Where is it? Here we go. Bum, 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 bum. Yeah, so the customer acquisition cost is usually the total cost of sales and marketing divided by the number of new customers acquired. It is not like every cost under the sun. You're just looking at how much you spent to acquire the customer.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any other questions? feedback, comments. Was it helpful? Not helpful? Great? Not great?
I've got another one if nobody else is going to step up. Oh,
Uh,
maybe.
yeah, let's hear Mary, and then we get back to you, Matthew.
Yeah.
Mary, question.
Are your sessions all like this? Because I find it very easy to understand, which is very different than what you learn in school. Like it's the same material, but this is very easy.
I'm glad it is. Yes, all my sessions are this awesome. That's what you're asking. I have materials on math for consulting interview, summary presentation. I have one on resumes and cover letters, which is kind of similar. And I have one on excelling in consulting. So like beyond getting the job. Um, what what can you expect? And then of course I do like the hourly, talk about whatever you want to talk about, and give you a pep talk when when you need it, and going through casing, like just typical good old casing, um, and personal experience interviews. I hope it was helpful. All
Yeah,
right,
it was. Thank you. You described all the different types of things that you do as well, which is interesting. Thank you.
absolutely. Matthew, going back to you, my friend.
Sorry, I'm taking up all the time. I'm just super interested in all this kind of stuff. When we're talking about the attractiveness of a market, is there any kind of index that is like an industry standard? So I'm a cybersecurity professional for the Army, and so we have something called CVEs, so like common vulnerabilities and exposures, and through that we have essentially like how difficult is it to gain access on the network? Like, can they do it over the network? Do they have to have local access, or do they have to have like physical access to a computer? So it really like breaks down those aspects of a cybersecurity breach, or a vulnerability, if you will. Is there anything like that when it comes to the attractiveness of the market? So like a threat of new tenants, is there something that values or measures like that can drill down into the threat of a new tenant coming in?
Yes. So to answer your question, the answer is yes. There are metrics for each. You don't need it for case interviews. You'll never be asked that question. But like for your own knowledge, I'm happy to answer. The high level metric that McKinsey at least uses to determine how attractive a market is something called the economic profit. Economic profit is basically accounting profit, takes into consideration a few other things, um, such as the cost of capital. So how much, how risky the industry is in a way, and how much profit do you compensate them for taking that risk, at the simplest term. And you can see here kind of the average economic profit by industry. You can see like the good industry being very high, like semiconductors, pharmaceuticals, software. And you see like some challenging industries like energy and utilities, where there's a lot of like, potentially competition or fluctuation or low margins and so on. Now, for the specific things that you asked about, there are some indices for each one of these, factors, like whether there's competition in the market. There's something called the HHI, I believe, index, which looks at like how consolidated or not or fragmented the industry is. It doesn't come up in interviews quite a lot, but there are some metrics that you can look at if you're interested for your own personal knowledge.
Awesome. Thank you. I wasn't expecting that good of an answer on that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Awesome team. Thank you so much. Wishing